Hong Kong took center stage as the world watched protests turn into riots and violence since June. What the media showed and what the world saw were peaceful protests and rallies. What they did not see and did not know was that after these protests ended, the rioters came out to play. A few hundred troublemakers, dressed in black, would emerge unleashing organized and destructive violence. However, both local and foreign media seem bent on accusing the police as heavy-handed, never showing the violence and assaults against the police. The camera almost never aimed at the rioters, who were provoking and attacking the police in the first place. In one scene probably not seen abroad, police were being chased and attacked by these armed thugs before retreating into their police van, which was then bashed and battered. These thugs are not ordinary normal citizens. They were fully armed. Take a look at their helmets, their gas masks, their elbow and knee pads, gloves, shields. In short, they were fully geared up for war. Then let's take a look at their weapons. Petrol bombs, corrosive liquid, wooden bats, slings to propel heavy bricks and other projectiles, revamped air pistols, laser guns capable of blinding, and umbrellas with knives attached to the ends. One police was pierced by such an umbrella knife in the back, and the gash and bleeding were horrific. In a recent police raid in a storage house related to an activist group, the police found 1.5 kilograms of TATP, a well-known, unstable, and extremely dangerous explosive used in terrorist attacks in London, Paris, and Brussels. These are thus not lawful, peaceful protesters. They are not even lawless criminals. They are terrorists, pure and simple. The foreign media, politicians, and community continued to point an accusing finger at our police force, without knowing the terrorism we have to face on a daily basis. Their numbers were small, only in the hundreds, sometimes even less, and each time affecting only a small area. These were flash mob activities, guerrilla warfare, and as suddenly as they appear, they would disperse. It is now clear that they were trained, both locally and abroad. We can see them practicing on rooftops. There were also on-site instructions with commanders guiding the action. They were paid and would go home after work just before the subways closed. Abundant financial support was apparent, as $500,000 Hong Kong dollars in cash was found under the bed of a rioter, and the unending supply of equipment and weapons left at riot scenes. Can we ask, who are the financiers, the paymasters? Is there a foreign intervention? Why are the foreign and local media so biased? Who stands to benefit most from our situation, politically, economically, or otherwise? We want to know the answer, and we want to say no to violence and terrorism. Let's restore peace and harmony to the beautiful city we call home.
Hello, I'm Michael Chagani, and this is Straight Talk. With me today is Eve Lui. Now, Eve, you are the external vice president of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Eve, the reason I asked you here is you're a student union leader. And I know that next week there will be a class boycott, right? The universities are going to have a class boycott. And even the secondary school students are going to have a class boycott because of this anti-extradition issue, right? Tell me, Eve, how long is this boycott going to last?
I think at least for 2 weeks, the class boycott campaign, but the actual duration actually depends on the response of the government, because actually by the 13th of September, if the government's not really responds to the 5 demands and then just turn a blind eye to all our campaign, and then we may escalate our action. Yeah.
So you're asking the chief executive to meet your 5 demands. Those demands, if I remember correctly, withdraw the bill, to classify what happened earlier as not a riot, and amnesty for all those arrested, bring back political reforms, and for her to resign, right? Now, you know she's not going to meet those demands, right? You and I both know that. So you're going to escalate your action. To what level? How are you going to escalate it?
Actually, we do not have a very concrete answer, because we are not the leaders of the movements, and we are not the so-called leader for the class boycott.
There are no leaders for this.
We are not class boycott campaigns leader as well. So we are going to listen to the voices of students and see how they would like to continue the class boycott campaign and how they would like to escalate our action. But I think some direction would be like some open-ended general strike.
You mean strike at the schools?
Yeah, strike at school, and as well as...
Nothing violent, I hope. Radical action. But tell me this, Eve. You know, I know you're 20 years old. You're in year 2 in university. And having a class boycott, surely that hurts you more than it hurts Carrie Lam, because you're losing out on an education. It doesn't hurt her much. I mean, if you have a boycott of classes, you don't learn, you don't study, it doesn't hurt her, it hurts you.
But I would say, actually, we are not abandoning education or study. For our student unions, we will organizing different lectures as well as events in the whole class boycott campaign to ensure that the principle of boycotting class but not study have been put into practice. Yeah.
So you're not going to sacrifice your education?
I'm not going to do so. Yeah.
Okay.
But actually, we are learning something more than textbooks. Yeah. We are going to.
What are you learning than textbooks, other than textbooks?
For example, actually, for our student unions, we will organize some lectures focus on legal issues about some criminal offense that we may meet in some protesting issues, as well as we will learn about the influence of tear gas and other chemical weapons.
Is that worth learning, the influence of tear gas? How does that help your future career?
I don't think that for students we only focus on textbook or something like our future career. If we lose Hong Kong, then we have no future.
Are we losing Hong Kong?
Yeah, sure.
In what way?
If we continue to see that the police abuse their power and then the governments really ignore the voices of people, then I cannot see how the teenagers' voices can be heard, and how the policies and also different kinds of strategies by governments with favor teenagers as well as all the Hong Kong people and bring benefit to the society. So I would say actually what we are doing is that we think as a students we have our responsibility to defend the justice as well as to protect our city, not just focus on like academic study. Yeah.
You know, Eve, aside from the university students, secondary school students are also joining the class boycott. Some of them are 12, they're preteens, 12, 13 years old. Is that a good thing for them? I mean, they're so young, they may not even understand what all this is about, right?
Yeah, so actually we, the student unions of higher institutions, as well as different groups of students' organizations, are trying to spread the message of why we are doing the class boycott campaign, why we are initiating that, and then hope that they would understand. But for sure that I think like in previous class boycott experience, for example, in 2014, 2012, we can still see many secondary school students who initiate different activities relating to what's happening in the society. And I don't think they are too young, or I don't think they know nothing about what they are doing. Yeah.
Okay, now let's have a look at something. The students had some kind of a rally some couple of weeks ago. Let's have a look.
中國嘅崛起對於全球人權同埋民主嘅影響。
Now, that was a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure you were there.
Yeah.
It's a big protest by university students in Central. This movement, leaderless movement, most of the people involved in these protests, some of them are violent protests, are young people. Over 700 of them have been arrested. Many of them are young people, university students like yourself. Why are you not afraid? I mean, what motivates you to go there and fight with the police? I don't know whether you've done that, but for so many people, they got arrested and they're going to have to go to jail. And you're not afraid. Why is that?
I would say that young people surely afraid of police or all this kind of oppression. But what we have to think about is why they are still going strike on the streets and then doing all those things despite of the fact that they are afraid of all this kind of...
Are you afraid when you go to these protests?
Because we have no choice, I would say. And
when you see a policeman pointing a gun at you, firing tear gas at you, a beanbag round at you, are you afraid?
Of course. And then
why do you go?
would be afraid as well. But actually we would think that we have no choice. If we would like to protect our city, if we would like to protect our next generation with a better Hong Kong, then we have to do it.
Okay, now Eve, I'm going to pin you down on this. You say you have to protect Hong Kong for the next generation. You are the next generation. I mean, you're 20 years old.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about, people that come after you, what are you protecting? I mean, what is wrong that you think Hong Kong is now that you need to protect them?
Some of the core values, for example, like freedom of speech, for example, our personal safety, for example, rule of law, all of this are undermining, destroying.
But you and I are sitting here and we're talking freely. That's free speech.
But I would say, like, there are many of the rights terror in our city. For example, when we say, when we support the protesters, then we may face some risk in our career, and all of this kind of things are actually happening in Hong Kong. Yeah. So if we do not come out and then voice our opinion, then it may be 10 years later or maybe faster, like 5 years later, we cannot like speak here freely.
Do you really believe that, Eve?
Yeah.
That 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you will lose the freedom of speech?
Yeah.
Why? What makes you believe that? Because
I can see that, like, previously we can see that some booksellers were kidnapped by
the booksellers in Causeway Bay, right?
Yeah, yeah, kidnapped, and they went to the mainland China and they disappeared for a period of time. And then when such kind of things have been happening in Hong Kong more and more frequently, and then, for example, like in the incidents of like Simon Cheng,
the person who worked for the British consulate in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
He was detained for 15 days in China.
Yeah, so I cannot. Is it foreseeable that our room for freedom of speech and also our freedom of assembly, etc., is under risk? Yeah.
Well, tell me this. You go to these protests. I don't know whether you've joined violent protests, but you do go to protests. I know that. What do your parents say? I mean, when you go and you say to your parents, I'm going to go join a protest, do they say, don't go? or put on your helmet and goggles to protect yourself? What did they tell you?
Actually, they really do not want me to go, but I think they understand the rationale of the protest. Are they afraid?
Are they worried about your safety when you go?
Of course, and they will keep calling me and then asking me where am I. Yeah.
And you take the calls and you tell them you're safe?
Actually, most of the time I cannot take the call. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because.
But if you don't take their calls, they worry even more.
I would have a suitable time, then I will call them back, but not at
the
that
height
moment.
of the protest, when things are getting out of hand, then you just cannot
I just
call
cannot
them.
handle it.
So they don't want you to go, but they understand why you're going.
But I know that many of my friends,
yes.
Also parents of some students, often worry about that, and then just prevent their students, their children from going to that kind of area and joining the protest.
They stop them from going?
Yeah.
But your parents have never stopped you from going?
Yeah.
They tried?
They tried, but they failed.
All right, okay. Quick break. About this, straight up with me is Yves Lui. Yves Lui, you're the external vice president of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Now, you're going to have a class boycott next week.
Yeah.
You said earlier that you have to fight for the next generation. That's why you're protesting. You feel that your free speech rights, other freedoms are being eroded, right?
Yeah.
So you have to come out and fight. But you're fighting against the Hong Kong government.
Yeah.
You're fighting against the central government. It's not a fight that I think you can win if you're fighting against the central government. Do you really feel it's worth it that even though you feel that some of your free speech rights are disappearing, on the whole, it is still one country, two systems? And China is respecting one country, two systems, and most of your freedoms are intact. So is it worth going to such lengths that we see protests and violence every week?
I would say, actually, we are not only looking at the effectiveness, whether it is worth it or not, but that's something we should do, I would say. We shoulder the responsibility to do, to protect what we have or protect the values that we believe.
How many students do you think will take part in this class boycott next week?
I think at least a few thousands, but it is only a very rough estimate number.
And you'll continue for 2 weeks and see what the chief executive says, right? Now, the chief executive wants to talk. She had a meeting last week with some people. She says, we want to have a dialogue platform. Anybody can come and talk to her. She's admitted she made a mistake with the extradition bill. She suspended it. She doesn't want to say withdraw, but she suspended it. And she has admitted that she has made a very, very bad decision on this that caused so much trouble that we are where we are today, right? Let's see what she has to say.
This is something that we want to do in a very sincere and humble manner. I and my principal officials are committed to listen to what the people have to tell us, and we want to reach out to the community as soon as possible.
She used the word humble. She's humble. She and her officials want to listen to what people want to say. Before she had this meeting, this dialogue with some community leaders, including university vice chancellors and so on, former government officials and so on, she approached your university among a few others, right? She approached, your university was the first place, along with a couple of other universities, that she approached the first time ever and says, come, let's talk. You refused. Why?
Because the author is in a very closed-door manner, and then the government insists without any prerequisites to hold this kind of meeting, and then refuse to invite all of the student unions leaders, but instead picked your
Chinese University of Hong Kong and a couple of other, I think Baptist University.
UST.
Right. So, but you turned her down. She said, come talk. You say it was closed door, but then finally she said, well, let's open it. Let's do it openly. And no preconditions, let's talk. You still said no. Why?
Oh, actually, she insist to have a closed-door manner. Yeah.
After you refuse, you say, let's have an open-door one as well, but you still refuse.
Because
you say we've got to go in there to have the 5 conditions met. Those are preconditions.
We have 2 prerequisites. One is to have an open meeting, and then another is to stop the prosecution of the protesters. Yeah.
But there are over 700 of them now. If you stop the prosecution, then you're breaking the rule of law. There is rule of law in Hong Kong, which you want to protect, right?
But actually, actually, many of the legal professionals have mentioned that according to the basic law and current statute, it is possible for the CE as well as the government to stop the prosecution manner and
grant an amnesty to everybody.
The law.
You mean an amnesty to everybody, right?
No, it is to stop the prosecution and, yeah, to stop the investigation process.
Okay, so in other words, just say, everybody, we will not charge you, and that's the end of the matter.
Yeah.
Is that really possible, Eve? Do you think if the government did that, wouldn't that be undermining our rule of law? Because some of them did commit pretty violent crimes.
But actually, I think that according to what the legal professionals and also professors said, it is possible for the government to do so. They have the power to do so. But actually, at the same time, if the government continue to prosecute the protesters, how can we start the dialogue with the government?
Okay, well, you know, on that point, let's have a look at another clip. Eve, we're seeing this every weekend now.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm getting tired of looking at it. I'm sure a lot of people are as well. It doesn't do Hong Kong's image any good. You see this kind of violence. Now, you see people beating up the police beating up the people,
yeah.
people beating up other people, and finally you saw the police draw their guns.
Yeah.
And one of them actually opened fire. Now, when you say don't charge any of them, but some of those people actually were violent, how can you not charge them?
But actually, I would say they are forced to do so. They are not really...
Do you support that? You say they're forced to do so. Do you support that kind of violence?
I would not say I support any of the acts of the protesters, but I would say I understand why they are doing so. I understand the rationale behind. No one would like to be violent. No one is born to be violent, especially for the teenagers. They can just stay at home and then without risking their life, without risking their career. Why don't you do that
instead of going out there and facing a policeman holding a gun in your face? Would that scare you?
Yes, as I mentioned, all of the teenagers will be scared, but actually they are still doing so because they think they are something they worth to fight for, and then they are thinking these kind of values are really mean to that. They think that this kind of values are more important than their life.
But you know, Eve, it started off with an extradition bill.
Yeah.
You know, Caroline said the bill is dead. You know, whatever word she uses, she refuses to use the word withdraw for whatever reason. But as far as most people know, it's not going to come back again. But somehow it's evolved into something much bigger. You talk about fighting for your freedoms, fighting for the future, fighting for your way of life. How did all that come out from an extradition bill?
Because I think that this kind of, this movement shows that the governments do not really listen to people, do not really listen to the voices of people, and then just ignore, turn a blind eye to all those acts and movements and protests, and then just use the police power to oppress the students as well as all the Hong Kong people.
Well, some people say, Eve, that you're fighting not for your freedoms, you're not fighting for a future generation. You're fighting for independence. That's what some people are saying. And foreign forces are helping people like you fight for the independence of Hong Kong. Are you fighting for independence or you're fighting for your freedoms?
I believe that there are no conflicts between the two. And then I believe that amongst all the protesters, there are certainly some of them are advocating Hong Kong independence.
That'll never happen, you know that.
While some protesters do not really agree with Hong Kong independence.
Do you agree with Hong Kong independence?
I think it is one of the way for us to have a better Hong Kong.
But do you support one country, two systems?
I don't think under the rule of the Communist Party we have the true one country, two system to be practiced. Yeah.
So you feel that there is, in fact, what you're saying is that there's no hope. The current situation of one country, two systems, there's no hope.
That's why so many teenagers come out, because they cannot see any hope. They cannot find any way out other than going to the streets and then to express their voice.
But that is distressing to hear, because most of the guests, young people I've had here before, never said that they supported a separation or independence. They supported one country, two systems, but they want to preserve the freedoms that Hong Kong has, right? And they didn't say they wanted anything more than that, but now you're saying that they want something more than that?
I would say some of the protesters believe that Hong Kong independence is a way out, yeah, but not all the protesters.
But it's not a way out, because it's not going to happen. You know that.
And then I would say, if you would like to pursue the democracy in Hong Kong under the system of under the one country, two system in the current situation, I cannot see how we can really get our freedom safeguard under this kind of situation.
All right. Okay. Well, let's hope things do get better rather than getting worse. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Good evening.
Там лучше проверить, а не думать.
Алло. Ну, ваш товариш загинув.
Хто це балакає?
А балакає підполковник Марочка.
Блядь. Оце Саня загинув, блядь.
Да, Саня загинув, дзвоняйте. Від...
Вы покормили свиньи, все ушли, теперь будем упаковывать.
Да, я слушаю.
Саша Тюменцева, телефон.
Вы что хотели? Вы его мама?
Да, я его мама.
Извините, пожалуйста, но ваш сын умер.
Понятно. Коли його привезуть?
Смотрите, сейчас мы тела эвакуируем. И мы надеемся в ближайшее время тело вашего сына передадим на украинскую сторону.
各位，我现在在乌克兰首都 Kiev。乌克兰是欧洲面积第2大的国家，这里有全世界最肥的黑土地。那乌克兰有很好的水手，他们以前有好的工厂，但是现在他们是欧洲最穷的国家。According to the International Monetary Fund, Ukraine overtook Moldova as the poorest country in Europe in 2018. 所以我现在在他们的地铁站，我们要去一个随便的地方，所以我们去看看怎么进去。每一张是2块人民币。那这个地铁很深。我刚才说这个电铁，我花了2分半。这是乌克兰的首都，但是他们只有3条地铁线。这30年，他们只修了1条线，还有几个站。所以这是一个乌克兰 Kiev 的小区，你们看那边有很多房子，这里有一个小卖部。这个西瓜是1公斤1块5毛人民币，比我上个视频买的便宜一半。这个片区所有的房子是10年的时候收了，除了这个 mall， 从35天到现在，他们只收了一个 mall。其他的都是30年以前收了，可以看看这个地有很多问题，没有人收。那我们现在去看看他们住的房子怎么样。 有人可以告诉我这是什么东西？这是他们的电梯。会翻阅。这个听起来有一点，我害怕，我真的害怕。没办法去他们的 roof。这个地方的房子的平均价格是一个平方1800美元。我觉得这个价格对当地人来说，应该还是有点贵。这里的理由是SD card 是180万人民币，这是一个 selfie stick。这是300人民币，一个手机 case 的价格是120到180人民币，这个插头是100人民币。这是一个给狗狗的娃娃，这个是70人民币，你们觉得贵吗？那他们也有中国来的鞋子，这个鞋子是500人民币。他们没有很多当地的工厂，没有当地的东西，所以他们这样的东西都比较贵，因为大部分都是进口的。那这个跟美国很不一样，因为在美国我们进口的衣服、进口的鞋子比我们当地的衣服、当地做的鞋子便宜很多。但是在这里进口的东西比这里当地的东西贵很多。Do you work now? Are you? And what do you do?
I am a project manager.
Teacher of dancing.
I am a private tutor of English.
Nurse.
Can you tell me, like, project managers in Ukraine, like, how much money on average do they make a month?
15,000 hryvnias.
$500. It's now $500.
$500 per month.
3,000.
3,000 hryvnias a month.
Hryvnian.
3,000 hryvnias a month.
Average salary is near $450 till $500.
Are a lot of people moving to foreign countries to make more money?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yes, actually that's one of the reasons. They can't find any chances.
Yes, we have two types of people which going abroad. First type, it is they're going like babysitter, cleaning, they work in supermarkets. And second type, they're like IT engineering or model.
Which country do the models go to?
I think a lot of going to China.
But what about after studying? Would you want to live here once you're finished studying, or no? Why not? No. Really? But it's your home country. Why wouldn't you want to live here?
Like, to be honest, I don't really like Ukraine.
In schools, if you you don't want to study. Your parents can just pay, and that's it. And then you can go to the best university, and it's all because of money.
So the people are going abroad because the economy in Ukraine has some issues. Why don't you talk about that part?
Yes. Economy of Ukraine gets worse because after revolution, which was in 2014 year, and after this time, compare, for example, $1 cost 8 hryvnia, and now $1 costs 25 hryvnia.
So the prices are a lot higher than before?
Yeah, prices are higher in two types, but salary is same. I think after revolution life is going harder. Because it was really bad event, it takes 3 months and the economy really gets worse after this revolution.
总的来说，本来乌克兰的发展不错，真的不错。但是现在乌克兰是最穷的欧洲国家。那30年前，这里的人均 GDP 是1500美元，那个时候中国是300美元。那现在他们的 GDP 是3000美元，但是中国的 GDP 现在是10000美元。那为什么会这样？第一，他们有钱人 monopolize 很多 industry， 他们赚了所有的钱。第二，这个国家的人经常革命，革命成功了以后，他们的经济还没有变好。第三，他们没有很多工业，所以很多东西是进口的。那革命以后，他们的钱贬值，所以进口的东西越来越贵，所以他们的生活越来越不好。那我现在走吧，拜拜。
大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. As Huawei's bans in America take hold, I've noticed a lot of strange comments on my videos by people saying things like, well, China bans Facebook, so this is just fair. What a strange thing to say. Do people out there really think there are parallels between Facebook being banned in China and Huawei being banned in America? Okay, well, time to shatter another stupid theory. Many foreigners who come to China complain about how things aren't the way they're used to. I'm no different. Years ago, when I first came, I also didn't understand the culture. Yes, you heard it here first, people. Even I have complained about things before. But as time went on, I started to understand and have respect for the one thing many Westerners have the hardest time accepting. China is not America. China is not Europe. China is not Japan. China doesn't claim to be those places, and it doesn't want to be those places. China is China, and it only wants to be China. Once that concept sets in, it becomes easier to understand China's motives and actions. But let's back up. I'm an American, and I enjoy the liberties of America, rights and privileges often not afforded in other places or cultures. And here in China, there are a different set of what's allowed and not allowed. Because, like I said, this is a different country. Being gay carries with it a death sentence in the UAE. In China, it's legal. Peaceful protests are legal in some countries. Contrary to popular belief in the West, in China, they are legal unless the protest threatens the state or the country or includes attacks against the army or police. Don't believe me? Here's me at a peaceful protest in China. Many police, many protesters. Practically no incidents. No problem. This was legal. In China, you can drink in public. In the US, you'll be arrested as a criminal. In Iran, you'll probably be killed. Now, I'm not here to tell you which of these laws are right or wrong. The point is, China's not the same as these other places. China is its own place. China has sovereignty and a national identity. It has its own rules. Get it? People outside of China sometimes make videos, posts, and articles about how much they disagree with China's laws. China should be forced to allow its citizens access to Facebook, for example. After all, the US can access Facebook. Why shouldn't China? On the China side, I don't see a lot of online campaigns about how the US should start allowing citizens to carry a beer down the street. That's because China cares most about China. In general, it doesn't comment on other countries' policies because, frankly speaking, it doesn't really care about them. Chinese people aren't having trouble sleeping because people in the US go to jail for drinking 1 inch away from another person drinking, separated only by a velvet rope. So why do Americans seem to care so much about if Chinese people can access Facebook? Well, they've been raised with a sense of superiority. Many Westerners believe they are superior to non-Western countries. They feel morally superior by default. It's quite interesting to see, actually. Westerners condemn China for not allowing Facebook, while at the same time we know for a fact Facebook isn't healthy. Happiness is reduced, and there are a number of negative effects. And honestly, there are really no positive effects, other than being able to keep in contact with acquaintances. But of course, we already have WeChat for that. Actually, I think most people who whine about Facebook are actually talking about freedom of speech. I mean, I hope so, because otherwise that means there are literally people out there who like Facebook that much. The US has freedom of speech at the core of its principles. And because they view the world as inferior to the US, they sometimes feel it's up to them to enforce their views on other countries. Note that the further from the West a culture is, the more the US will complain about it. Britain, for example, has been abandoning any notion of free speech for years, but there's hardly a peep from the US. This Eurocentrism is an after effect of a colonial mindset. Some countries seem quite excited to condemn countries which are unlike them. In short, a superiority complex justifies people to enforce their views on other countries, even when it's clear that the effects can be negative. I just want to point out that literally no other country in the world agrees with the idea that freedom of speech is the most important right. And the United States itself doesn't even really believe this idea. As I'm recording this, thousands of videos are being removed from American social media for political reasons. But let's forget about the insane amount of hypocrisy from all this. Let's just take a look at why China doesn't allow Facebook. People in America don't seem to have the slightest clue about why. They think it has something to do with freedom of speech or criticism or something. No, not really. Facebook was blocked for a very specific reason. Didn't know that? Well, then you probably shouldn't be whining about poor old Facebook being blocked if you don't actually know the facts. Recognized as an extreme terrorist group by the US, EU, China, and other countries, the Turkestan Islamic Party is known for suicide bombs, bus bombs, shootings, and murders in China, as well as plots in Norway, Germany, and the UAE. Unlike the vast majority of peaceful Muslims in China, this small group is comprised of a bunch of dangerous killers. Their branch in Syria enjoys employing child soldiers, and their closest allies are Al-Qaeda and other extreme terrorist groups. In 2009, they coordinated a violent riot in China, in which thousands of terrorists attacked citizens, including moderate Muslims. Hundreds of non-Muslim or moderate Muslims were beaten to death on the streets. They surrounded innocent civilians and stabbed them to death. But how did these terrorists coordinate these attacks? Using Facebook. So China tried to get Facebook to ban the group they were using and its members. But since Facebook didn't have any obligation to listen to the Chinese government, they simply ignored the requests. So here we are at a crossroads. Imagine you're in charge of America. There's a Chinese website called Bookface that is allowed in your country. Riots break out with extremists killing people in the streets. They've been known to bomb people, use child soldiers, and you have no doubt they will continue to kill your citizens. You find out that they've been using the Chinese website Bookface to coordinate their attacks. So you contact Bookface and you tell them to block the terrorists. China tells you, oh, sorry, we have freedom of speech, so yeah, sorry about that. Good luck with the terrorists, though. Do you say, well, damn, I guess they're right. Let's just let these terrorists continue to kill innocent citizens because you know what? The entire internet should be open to everyone. Or do you say, okay, well, Bookface is banned in America, that's for sure. We'll make our own damn social media app that we can control so we don't have gangs of organized terrorists coordinating attacks on it. Well, based on some of the stupid comments I get, I'm not even sure which one everyone will pick. So I'll just tell you, the answer that you're supposed to choose is the one where you stop killing people by banning a website. But maybe you're thinking to yourself, it's been 10 years. Why doesn't China unban Facebook and let's just let the past be the past? Well, again, instead of this endless virtue signaling about how everyone should do what the West thinks they should do, why don't you try looking at the situation from the eyes of the Chinese for once? Look at these Facebook groups. This is not 2009, this is right now. I've reported these groups already multiple times, and yet they're still there. These groups are totally fine according to Facebook. On and on and on. There are hundreds of China hate groups on Facebook. Most of them have been there for years. Okay, so Facebook is totally fine with anti-Chinese hatred. At least they're not still supporting actual incitement of violence, right? There are literally 5 groups with that name calling for the deaths of Chinese people. These are terrorists directly supported by Facebook. And you know what? I've been making videos about China for around 6 months now, and in that time I've gotten exactly 2 death threats. Both of them from the East Turkestan terrorists. That's right, I get death threats for asking questions like, are you sure we should all hate China Western media? Shouldn't we try to be balanced? I face the storm of negative press about China head on. And for it, I get death threats by a terrorist group that Facebook enables. Now, I ask you, why the hell should China allow this website? Why? It sponsors hate. It contributes to the anti-Chinese climate, and when it contributes to direct acts of violence, all we get are a bunch of people whining about freedom of speech. When people are being killed in the streets, there is no more freedom of speech. That's when it's time for safety first. If and when Facebook permanently bans incitement of terrorism and stops fueling colonial fascism, then we can talk about if it should be allowed in China. In the meantime, what you should be asking yourself is, how can you reduce your use of it? I've had a Facebook off and on since it was new. I've reduced my activities to a minimum, and I'm working on deleting it altogether. Thank God Facebook is banned in China. And if you're lucky, it'll be banned in your country too. Thanks.
跟住我想俾大家睇下一個烏克蘭女子嘅 YouTube 視頻嘅剪輯。
I am the Ukrainian, the native of Kiev, and now I am on Maidan, on the central part of my city. I want you to know why thousands of people all over my country are on the streets.
觸發點 2013年11月21號，烏克蘭總統放棄咗同歐盟簽署一個貿易協議，咁希望同俄羅斯更緊密嘅聯繫，跟住就發起大型嘅遊行示威。13年12月1號嘅時候，基輔喺獨立廣場有30萬人示威。講講偽旗行動喺呢個階段咧會好普遍。第一單咧，左手邊嗰度喺14年2月20號嘅時候咧，基輔喺個暴力事件嗰度係一個最惡劣嘅一日，喺48小時之內有88個人死咗。其中有一個最重要嘅事件就係話有一個政府嘅狙擊手喺個屋頂度射殺咗一個示威人士，即刻群情洶湧啦。曾經有報道話嗰個狙擊手好似係被美國人收買嘅，冇確定㗎嚇。呢啲就所謂叫做偽旗行動。香港仲未去到呢個階段，但係肯定就係向住呢個方向前進。咁包括已經有好多嘅假新聞。另外一單，第二單就係話喺俄羅斯工作嘅時候，曾經聽講過呢個馬航客機 MH17 咧，根本就係由烏克蘭軍隊所擊落。點解挑選一架由阿姆斯特丹即係荷蘭飛出嘅客機？或者因為嗰陣時俄羅斯同埋荷蘭係最大嘅貿易夥伴，而當時荷蘭呢係仍然唔支持全面制裁俄羅斯，因為點解一制裁嘅時候就連自己經濟都會受到影響。但係民航機被擊落之後呢，歐盟就立刻統一咗意見，正式大幅制裁俄羅斯，亦都令到歐盟同埋俄羅斯經濟都受到打擊。大家其實可以諗下，邊個最想策劃呢個可能嘅偽旗行動呢？跟住就開始進入國際關注。呢個係片頭入邊見到嘅烏克蘭女子佢發出嗰個求救嘅視頻啦。14年3月，俄羅斯加強保護烏克蘭境內嘅俄羅斯人，就派出軍隊。然後歐盟呢亦都提議咗好多貿易措施支持烏克蘭經濟，其實就希望幫助佢離開俄羅斯。跟住克里米亞就宣布獨立回歸俄羅斯，奧巴馬就喺白宮會見新嘅烏克蘭總理，就表示支持烏克蘭，並且否定克里米亞嘅獨立。最尾嘅時候就係普京就簽署咗俄羅斯接受克里米亞嘅回歸啦。其實可以比較翻點解而家呢有人都喺度討論緊，希望話解放軍進入香港平亂。如果呢樣嘢發生呢，我幾肯定咧，中國將會好快會被制裁。原因點解？只需要2個字：人權。跟住西方開始制裁俄羅斯14年3月西方開始制裁俄羅斯。呢個其實就係整個計劃嘅最終嘅目標。制裁係西方國家對付敵人最有效嘅武器，封殺佢進入國際資本市場，扼殺相關國家嘅經濟。而烏克蘭就可能只係一個工。9月5號，烏克蘭同埋親俄叛軍簽署咗停火條約。烏克蘭就開始真正進入亂世，因為經濟變差，民不聊生，更多嘅動亂。我曾經聽過香港有學生講生於亂世。我諗過去幾年烏克蘭人應該會真正明白乜嘢叫做生於亂世，失去咗啲咩嘢呢？不斷嘅戰爭，本地人同埋親俄軍嘅軍隊長年對立，3年之內死咗超過1萬人，400萬人逃離居所，估計人口會由現在嘅4500萬跌到去2050年嘅3600萬，真正係生於亂世。有人就唔中意國家冇改變，就係有人就憎恨戰爭，互相指責，沒完沒了，或者就離開家園啦。經濟變壞，呢個就係危機爆發之後嘅 GDP 表現。去到18年尾 5年之內下跌咗接近2成。假設而家可以每年有3至4% 增長，亦都要超過5年啊，先至可以返到去2013年嘅水平。最後一個失，歐盟表示喺未來嘅25年，烏克蘭唔會成為歐盟或者北約嘅一個成員國，因為仍然有好多國家反對烏克蘭加入。原先想離開俄羅斯魔爪而投奔西方嘅政客，結果令到烏克蘭而家兩頭唔到岸，情何以堪？莫非當時只不過係一廂情願？鼓勵離開俄羅斯嘅時候，西方又話得嘅。美國係世界上嘅超級強國啊，呢個係無可否認嘅。喺第2次世界大戰之後，美國喺韓戰同埋越戰嘅花費巨大，死傷超過咗幾十萬嘅士兵。大家可以喺右手邊呢，50、60年代嘅時候，你可以睇到美國嘅軍費咧，仍然都係好龐大。唔知去到咩時候呢，就決定咧投放多啲資源喺鼓吹分離主義嘅任務嗰度，就去協助其他嘅國家或者地方去達成目的，唔需要再勞師動眾出兵或者嘥一啲軍費，只需要用傳媒或者相關嘅人物喺唔同嘅地方灌輸分離主義思想就得啦。本小利大，這些年已經漸見成效，可以幫助美國達成長遠嘅目標，令到美國更加強大啦。傳媒佢哋主要提供有關中國或者俄羅斯嘅負面消息，希望你相信大國就係妖怪。電台好多時都只係講中國嘅壞消息，香港有幾好。一啲報紙同埋社交媒體都係宣揚共產黨就係妖怪嘅信息，傳播一啲叫做恐共嘅思想。教育界話俾你聽，我哋要變，向威權說不。從最近嘅新聞同埋報導，我先知道呢，原來教育系統之內有唔少嘅偏激思想嘅老師同埋學校管理人員。我可以想像喺中學同埋大學嘅環境呢，佢哋係點樣教育我哋天真嘅下一代？而家最近準備話幫助學生喺9月嘅時候開始罷課，已經而家唔需要再隱藏。最後冇辦法唔講下呢啲政客或者叫做政棍咯。佢哋嘅工作好容易，只需為反而反，將破壞嘅結果歸咎去政府嗰度就搞掂。佢哋會講警察唔清場就係引示威者破壞，驅散群眾就係警察使用過分暴力。總之警察就係衰啦。呢3種人傳播嘅歪理呢，你會得到一個共同嘅意識：共產黨係魔鬼，中國只有貪污，全中國嘅財產3萬幾億儲備呢，只係歸於9000萬嘅共產黨黨員，甚至乎可能只係1000萬可以用得到嘅啫。香港管治有乜問題等等。當年烏克蘭人同樣都係聽到好多呢啲俄羅斯真理啦。呢個組合呢，已經有非常之多嘅成功例子，對所到嘅國家造成咗長年不可補救嘅破壞。咩叫分離主義？革命係追求咩嘢？結果又點樣？革命鐵三角最中意就係見到經濟受到破壞，令到更加多嘅人上街，就進行更加多嘅暴力事件。根據《東方日報》8月9號嘅報導呢，官媒呢就質疑美國 NED 就透過黎智英參與亂港搞事。NED 呢就係號稱係一個 NGO 嘅非牟利嘅組織啦。佢嘅資金來源主要係嚟自美國國會嘅撥款，有第2中情局之稱。表面上嘅宗旨就支持海外嘅民主運動，實質就係助力一啲顏色革命。香港人應該點樣去睇呢幅相？ 嚟大班係顯示緊俾反對派佢就係領袖嗎？以後係咪由佢去決定將嚟香港嘅運動方向呢？至於美國嘅官方立場，睇呢個圖非常清楚啦。之鋒嘅角色又係點樣呢？佢喺金鐘同美國駐港領事會面，企到好似好尊敬，好似見到老師咁，當然可以令到大家有好多聯想。佢之後亦都解釋，只不過係一個正常嘅會面。根據資料，呢位 Julie 係美國外交系統嘅深戰同埋顛覆專家。佢哋嘅會面原因為何？大家自己判斷啦。要明白分離主義邊個得益呢？其實唔困難，只需要諗下邊個最希望見到以下嘅情況：烏克蘭同俄羅斯交惡，英國喺歐盟嗰度分離，日本同南韓嗌交，中國同台灣對立，中國同香港嘈交，邊個最想見到呢啲局面啊？明白到爭吵嘅存在，我哋可以諗下邊個可能係最大嘅既得利益者呢？南韓同台灣有恐懼，同邊個買武器啊？點解日本需要有一個軍事基地？係咪製造恐慌就可以賣武器去制衡中國啊？大家諗一下，只係有3億人口嘅國家，睇下左下角，美國佔全世界人口 4.3%， 點樣去統治全世界嘅77億人呢？如果你哋全部都團結，仲有冇機會稱霸天下呢？特朗普就好簡單嘅人，有人話佢聰明，亦都有人話相反，因為佢將所有嘅嘢都擺喺台面，唔會好似以前嘅總統咁樣咁含蓄，佢就太明顯啦。香港嘅前路會點呢？點都要睇下而家點收科至得㗎。我就相信其實係冇解決嘅方法。香港係中國重要嘅對外窗口，擁有西方嘅法治，接受西方嘅文化，喺中國南大門得到國際金融市場發展嘅優勢，正好就係被西方國家利用成為打擊中國嘅工具。經過咗多年嘅革命鐵三角灌輸部分香港人嘅仇中崇外嘅核心思想之後呢，而家只需要等待經濟變壞呢，就可以乘機發起對抗政府嘅行動，然之後將呢件事推向世界，直到中國干預嘅時候就會得到制裁啦。我睇到唔少嘅家長帶住小朋友參與遊行同埋示威咧，就話俾小朋友感受一下自由嘅空氣，同埋對政府抒發不滿。呢種做法咧係完全冇問題。6月舉行咗2次所謂嘅100萬人遊行示威，8月18又有170萬嘅和平示威。參加咗之後發生嘅暴力行為，你哋唔能夠選擇否定。因為點解？只不過係一小撮人就可以騎劫咗民意，做一啲你根本可能冇諗過嘅激烈行動。家長們，你哋知唔知道烏克蘭人成功咁離開咗俄羅斯嘅魔爪之後，國家長年內亂，經濟完全冇起色。呢次我哋好有可能重複緊呢個路向。如果你哋知道可能爭取唔到你哋所希望得到嘅嘢，但要付出沉重嘅經濟代價，你哋會唔會折衷，再諗其他方法，抑或想留俾我哋下一代一個爛攤子呢？呢幅圖係多年前泰國嘅紅衫軍對住黃衫軍。有咩意思啊？有人問呢，如果反對暴力應該點樣做？我一向都係唔贊成大家用暴力對抗。你只需要將反對嘅意見表達便可以。試想像下，有一日我哋有10萬個黑衫人 喺街上面對住10萬個白衫人，3萬個警察點樣可以維持秩序？呢種情況再發展落去呢，就結果就係令到香港真係咁樣進入亂世。當然啦，而家喺香港好難做到政治中立，我哋只可以宏觀看大局，唔好俾人推到我哋去一個非黑即白嘅極端境況。離開判斷極端呢，係我嘅忠告。我嚟到呢個階段呢，我奉勸大家唔好睇太多嘅新聞，社交媒體會提供好多能量，就好似毒品一樣呢，因為有好多可能嘅假新聞呢，去支持住一啲無形嘅分離主義思想，令你保持嗰種憎恨嘅亢奮狀態。無論係黑白兩邊誰對誰錯呢，係減少判斷嘅機會，因為呢啲就係一小撮人最希望見到香港嘅場面，非黑即白，極端敵對啊！少睇一啲，負能量都會減少啊！我好鍾意真正嘅獅子山下精神係點㗎？拋開區分求共對，放開彼此心中矛盾，理想一起去追。我好希望香港仍然繼續係一個福地。Yulia 呢個烏克蘭女仔呢，仍然好出名。佢出席過唔少演講會，講烏克蘭嘅民主進程。據講而家佢喺 Stanford 讀緊書，但係其他嘅烏克蘭人仍然喺痛苦中掙扎，唔知道乜嘢時候先至可以得到5年前爭取嘅目標。鼓吹分離主義嘅終極目標呢，唔一定要你支持國土分離，可以令到族群造成咗對抗同埋人民撕裂呢，亦都可以叫做大功告成㗎喇。我話知你叫自己做港獨、自主自決、自己香港自己救等等，呢啲都係叫做分離主義，都要說不。100個人有100種聲音，仍然可以和諧共處，呢啲先至係我認知嘅民主。